Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Islamic Audiobooks collection. I will be reading When the Moon Split by Safiur R Mubarakpuri, which we downloaded from kalamullah.com. Let's read.
Page 145. Permission to fight. Up to this point, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had counselled Muslims to endure insults and abuses in silence. Now, however, the Muslims had the upper hand. This newfound supremacy triggered off even fiercer opposition from their enemies. At last, Allah made it permissible for Muslims to fight against their oppressors. And this permission later became a duty. The permission to fight was given in stages. At first, the Muslims were allowed to fight only the Quraysh because they were the first to oppress Muslims in Mecca. Muslims were also allowed to seize their goods, but not those of tribes at peace with them. Then, the Muslims were allowed to fight any pagan tribe that allied itself with the Quraysh, or any other pagan tribe that oppressed Muslims. Later, the Muslims were permitted to fight any Jewish tribe that broke its covenant with the Muslims. In such a case, the covenant was automatically nullified. Subsequently, the Muslims were allowed to fight people of the book, Christians and Jews, who harassed or persecuted them. If the people of the book surrendered to the Islamic State, paying jizya, a nominal tax, then the Muslims were forbidden to fight them. Finally, the Muslims were required to make peace with any polytheists, Jews or Christians who embraced Islam, and to respect their rights and property. Now that Allah had enjoined Muslims to fight in self-defense, the Prophet, peace be upon him, moulded the formerly oppressed, meek community into a military organization that would fight to survive and would no longer tolerate the depredations of every tribe that decided to prey on them. Archery and horsemanship were held out as activities to excel in. The Prophet, peace be upon him, organized the Muslims into cavalry units called Seerah. Sometimes he would accompany these squadrons, and the expeditions he took part in were called ghazawat. The cavalry units undertook four main tasks. Primarily, they were to protect the outskirts of Medina and to gather intelligence about any suspicious activities. Secondly, they worked to intercept Meccan trade caravans passing through the area. Many Muslims had been forced to leave their wealth behind in Mecca when they migrated to Medina. Therefore, Muslims were allowed to retaliate by raiding caravans financed by the Quraysh. Thirdly, it was the responsibility of these cavalry units to make covenants with other tribes outside Medina. The Prophet, peace be upon him, saw the need to develop good relationships with these tribes so that they would not ally themselves with the Quraysh. Lastly, the units were entrusted with the task of spreading the message of Islam throughout Arabia. The first Seerah, singular form of Saraya, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, dispatched was called Seerah Saif al-Bar. It took place in Ramadan, 1 AH, the first year of the Prophet, peace be upon him's, migration or hijrah. AH refers to after hijrah. The Prophet, peace be upon him's, uncle Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib, may Allah be pleased with him, led the squadron accompanied by 30 Muhajirin. They headed for the coast of the Red Sea on the outskirts of Ais and came across a caravan headed by Abu Jahl that was returning from Syria. A battle almost erupted when the two parties faced each other, but Majdi bin Amr Jani intervened and the matters subsided. This was the first Seerah in the history of Islam. The Muslims rode beneath a white standard, the first ever used by Muslims, borne by Abu Majdad bin Hasin Ghanwi, may Allah be pleased with him. In the following months, the Prophet, peace be upon him, sent a number of Saraya, one after another. Abu Ubaidah bin Harith led a party of 60 Muhajirin to Batan Rabi. They came across Abu Sufyan and 200 Meccans. Arrows were shot from both sides, but there was no combat. Sa'd bin Abu Waqqas was dispatched along with 20 Muhajirin to Rabi' bin Kharar, but the men returned without having had to fight. Then in Safiur 2 AH, for the first time, the Prophet, peace be upon him, himself went out to battle, accompanied by 70 Muhajirin. They journeyed to Abwa or Wadan, but once again they did not come across any enemies. However, it was during this journey that the Prophet, peace be upon him, finalized a treaty of peace and cooperation with Amr bin Makshi al-Damri. The following month, Rabi al-Awwal 2 AH, the Prophet, peace be upon him, led a group of men to Buwat on the outskirts of Radwi. During the same month, Qurs bin Jabir al-Fikhri rustled some grazing cattle belonging to the Muslims. The Prophet, peace be upon him, gathered 70 Muhajirin and chased him to Safwan on the outskirts of Badr, but Qurs escaped. This expedition is known as the First Battle of Badr. The Prophet, peace be upon him, also led a squadron of 150 to 200 Muhajirin in either Jamad al-Awwal or Jamad al-Thani 2 AH. They went to Dhul Ashira to intercept a caravan headed for Syria, but it had passed a few days before they arrived. During this journey, the Prophet, peace be upon him, finalized a non-aggression pact with Banu Mudlaj. To further steel his men in the art of warfare, the Prophet, peace be upon him, sent Abdullah bin Jash Asadi along with 12 Muhajirin to Nakhla, an area between Makkah and Taif in Rajab 2 AH. Their objective was to gather intelligence about a caravan financed by the Quraysh. Abdullah's men attacked the caravan and killed one person. They also took 2 captives, whom they brought back to Medina. When the Prophet, peace be upon him, heard about what had happened, he became very upset. He set the prisoners free and paid blood money to the victim's family. The Quraysh protested vehemently about the attack because it took place in Rajab, one of the prohibited months, the period during which fighting is unlawful. Allah revealed the following verse in reference to the Muslim attack on the caravan. They ask you concerning fighting in the prohibited months. Say, fighting during these months is a grave offence, but preventing people from following the path of Allah, disbelieving in Him, preventing access to the sacred mosque, and driving out its residents are greater offences with Allah. Unrest and oppression are worse than killing. Qur'an 2:217. In Shaban 2 AH, the Qibla, direction Muslims pray towards, was changed from Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem to the Kaaba in Mecca. The change was announced by Allah in a verse in the Qur'an. The Prophet, peace be upon him, and the sincere Muslims rejoiced over this change. The hypocrites, who had pretended to be Muslims, however, protested the change, and many of them reverted to either Judaism or paganism, thereby purifying the ranks of the Muslims. The military raids undertaken by the Muslims were minor until this point. They had been more exploratory than anything else, but they had served to initiate Muslims into the conduct of warfare. It was the Battle of Badr, however, that was a milestone for Islam as the first decisive battle between the Muslims and the Quraysh. The Prophet, peace be upon him, rode to Dhul Ashira, attempting to intercept a trade caravan from Mecca to Syria. The caravan, however, managed to flee to Syria. The Prophet, peace be upon him, then dispatched 2 men to Hawra in Syria to await the caravan's return. When the scouts spotted the caravan approaching, they hurried back to Medina to inform the Prophet, peace be upon him. Once the Prophet, peace be upon him, heard that the caravan was returning, he mustered between 313 and 317 men, 2 horses and 70 camels. He then headed for Badr, about 155 kilometers southwest of Medina. The Prophet, peace be upon him, awarded the white standard to Mus'ab bin Umair. The Muhajirin were given a separate standard, which was carried by Ali bin Talib, may Allah be pleased with him, while the standard of the Ansar was borne by Sa'd bin Mu'ad, may Allah be pleased with them all. Badr, ringed by high mountains, was accessible through 3 routes. One called Al-Udwat al-Qaswa lay in the south, the second called Al-Udwat al-Dunya approached from the north, and the third approached from the east and was used by the people of Medina as the main thoroughfare to the settlement of Badr. There were some houses, wells and orchards in Badr, and for this reason Meccan caravans heading for Syria travelled along it and generally broke their journey there, staying anywhere from a few hours to a few days. It would have been simple for the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his men to seize the caravan by blockading all three escape routes. Success depended on the element of surprise, however, and the Muslims would have to appear only after the caravan pulled into Badr and seal off all three routes before the Quraysh could react. Accordingly, the Prophet, peace be upon him, and his men left Medina, heading in the opposite direction from Badr. Once the Prophet, peace be upon him, was at a safe distance away from Medina, he changed routes and headed directly for Badr. The caravan that the Muslims hoped to seize was headed by Abu Sufyan bin Harb. It consisted of 40 men, 1,000 camels, and goods worth 50,000 dinars. Abu Sufyan was highly cautious, and he asked every person he met about the movement of the Muslims. He was at a great distance from Badr when he found out that a large band of Muslims had left Medina. Acting quickly, he turned the caravan westward and headed for the coast, bypassing Badr altogether. Moreover, he sent a messenger to Mecca requesting reinforcements. When the Quraysh received Abu Sufyan's message, they quickly rounded up a squadron of 1,300 men to confront the Muslims and protect the caravan. All the notable chiefs of Mecca, except for Abu Lahab, joined the force, as well as every man from each of the neighbouring tribes. Of the Meccan clans, only Banu Aday refused to take part. When the pagan army reached Jufa, they received a message from Abu Sufyan informing them that the caravan was safe and that the army should return to Mecca. The men were preparing to return when Abu Jahl arrogantly refused to retreat. Only the men from the Banu Zahra returned on the advice of their chief, Akhnas bin Sharik Tagafi. The rest of the troops, now numbering 1,000, continued their journey. Upon reaching Udwa Qasmi, the Quraysh set up their camp in a spacious field just behind the mountains that surrounded Badr. The Prophet, peace be upon him, learnt that the Quraysh were approaching Badr, and he met with his men to discuss their options. Abu Bakr and Umar, may Allah be pleased with them both gave their opinions, and Miqdad bin Amr voiced the prevailing sentiment. O Prophet, peace be upon him, we will not say what the children of Israel said to Musa. You and your Lord go fight, and we will sit here. Qur'an 5:24. We will fight along with you, on your left and on your right, in front of you and behind you. Miqdad's words gladdened the Prophet, peace be upon him, with their sincerity, for he had worried the Ansar would fight in defence only if they were attacked in Medina. After all, the second pledge of Aqaba did not call for the Ansar to fight alongside the Prophet, peace be upon him, outside the city. The Prophet, peace be upon him, then asked the men if they all agreed. Sa'd bin Mu'adh, the chieftain of the Ansar, said, O Prophet, I swear by the one who has sent you with the truth, that if you plunge into the sea, we will also plunge in with you, and not a single man among us will lag behind. We will not hesitate if you dash against the enemies, for we are firm in war and bold in the fray. Lead us, and may Allah bless us and our mission. At this, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, I bring you glad tidings from Allah. He has promised me either booty from the caravan or victory on the battlefield. By Allah, there is a vision before me of a battlefield, and I see the exact places where each man will fall. Resolutely, the Prophet, peace be upon him, led his men onward to Badr, and they arrived there the same night as the Quraysh. The Muslims set up camp at Al-Udwat al-Dunya, but Al-Hubab ibn al-Munzir advised the Prophet, peace be upon him, that they should move ahead and encamp at the well, nearest the enemy, so that they could store water in reservoirs. He also suggested that the rest of the wells be filled up, so that the Quraysh would have no water. The Prophet, peace be upon him, took Hubab's brilliant advice and carried out his instructions. The Muslims then made a small enclosure of palm branches in which the Prophet, peace be upon him, would stay while directing his men during the battle. A group of Ansar youths were put under the command of Sa'd bin Mu'adh to act as lookouts. After this, the Prophet, peace be upon him, walked around Badr with his men, saying, This is the spot where so-and-so will fall in battle tomorrow, God willing. He passed the night in prayer at the foot of a tree, while a gentle rain fell and lulled the men into a refreshing sleep. Allah recounts His favour to the believers in the following verse. Remember how Allah enveloped you with drowsiness to make you feel safe. He caused rain to descend upon you from heaven so you could clean yourselves. Rain that also removed Satan's influence, strengthened your hearts, and made you stand firm in battle. Qur'an 8:11. The next morning, Friday, Ramadan 17-2 AH, the two armies came face to face. O Allah, here come the Quraysh in their vanity and arrogance, the Prophet, peace be upon him, supplicated. They deny you and call your Prophet a liar. O Allah, fulfill your promise to me. Help us, Allah. The Prophet, peace be upon him, assembled his men and told them not to begin fighting until he ordered them to do so. Use arrows only when they come close, and don't draw your swords until they are very near. Abu Bakr, may Allah be pleased with him, then escorted the Prophet to the small enclosure where the Prophet, peace be upon him, began to pray to his Lord. O Allah, if this group is destroyed today, you will not be worshipped forever. O Allah, if it is your consent that after this day you will not be worshipped forever. Abu Jahl also prayed, O God, destroy today the party that seeks to break filial ties and believes in wrongdoing. O Allah, help the party today which is much loved by you.
Jazakallah khair for listening.